like to blather on and complain and moan and basically make stuff up. This gentleman right here actually goes for the truth, and unabashedly so. Simon, you're out of the jungle down in South America. It is a pleasure to finally meet you face to face.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
So first of all, I want to get the basics of you. On your Skype, it says the Netherlands. Is that where you're from originally?
Yeah. So my parents are from Germany. I was born in Germany, but I grew up in Holland most of the time. That's why where I also went to school, big like the majority of the time, and that's where I got my bachelor's, my master's, my PhD. So the Netherlands is my country, my main country, my home country.
Does it make you sad to see what's happening in the Netherlands right now with respect to the tri-state cities and the Dutch farmers, and clearly the Belt and Road Initiative wants to have a hub and a stop right there in your country?
And so I don't know what the farmers I think differently than most people in our bubble. I think it's partly also their problem because they followed the monoculture approach, which I don't consider sustainable, and I hate the word sustainable. It's awful. It's used in a wrong term.
Agree.
But I think monocultural farming leads to the use of Monsanto, of Roundup, and this is nothing I can support. So I support more like a permaculture approach or a like integrated approach with like which goes beyond monoculture. So if farmers did this, there wouldn't be this nitrate initiative, which I partly consider ridiculous, but also nitrates in the groundwater, which you drink, is not good for your health. So there should be something done about this as well. So I'm not like 100% on the side of the farmers, but it's good that they have the balls to at least counter what the politicians are doing. And I mean, like the Dutch government responded in a way, and they said like, "Hey, farmers who don't want to comply, we're going to take your land." And this is just like wrong. I mean, they should come up with good solutions. For example, stopping with monoculture, integrating other side businesses that can use the waste streams of, for example, their cattle. But not say like, hey, if you don't give up your business, we're going to take it from you. That's just wrong, and I think it's good that they're going on the streets and demonstrating. But I've been missing them when there were COVID demonstrations. So there were demonstrations in the Netherlands against COVID, against the measures. They were huge, and there was no single farmer out there demonstrating. So whenever it comes to their interest, they're demonstrating. But whenever it came to us having the freedom of us deprived, they were not demonstrating with us. So I mean, of course, there were some farmers demonstrating on our side as well. But I mean, like if they had gone on the streets back then against the measures, that government wouldn't have any chance but leave them. So I'm seeing it and with a crying eye.
Yeah, it is interesting what's happening. If you look around the world, humanity seems to be trying to rise and push back against tyranny, which has been embedded in civilization since the dawn of man, it would seem. And here in the United States, we haven't realized, frankly, that we are a captured operation, a captured nation. We're not even a country anymore. We're a corporation, and with sub-corporations. You have, basically fled your home country. You have ostensibly you've sequestered yourself into the jungle, as you will. You say that you are on the spectrum and that people didn't understand you during COVID. You've proven to be right, as of many of us were who took the same position as you during COVID. But you went a little bit more extreme. You sort of seem to have removed yourself from day-to-day society. Why is that?
Well, I more or less had to. So if we go back before I call it pandemic because I'm convinced it was planned.
Of course.
So in order to have a pandemic, they needed a PCR test. Without any PCR test, there wouldn't have been any cases, no pandemic, because there was no excess mortality at any point before they applied the vaccines or the gene therapy. So in order to get the test through the United Nations, there was some group within the WHO who was making this PCR test gold standard. But before making gold standard, they needed some scientific basis. So there's this guy in Berlin, Christian Drosten is his name, and he was writing a paper on this COVID PCR. So he wrote this protocol, paper on this COVID PCR protocol. And it was published in January, I think it was January 16th, around this time, very early, by the way. And the co-author of this publication was Marion Koopmans. She's like the Dutch state virologist, and Christian Drosten is the German state virologist. So he got these two people. And Marion Koopmans was involved in this committee of the WHO that made this test gold standard, which Christian Drosten was publishing. The scandal was this paper was submitted on one day and was published the next day. So it skipped peer review process. I mean, they stated they conducted a peer review, but they didn't.
I was going to say that's not possible in 24 hours, is it?
No, it's not. It's not possible. It's impossible. It's like your grandma wins a 100-meter race against Usain Bolt. She most likely won't.
Right.
So this is what happened, and the only thing I was doing end of 2020, beginning of 2021. I was explaining to my followers on Twitter, I mean, like probably 50 followers, so literally nobody, how a peer review process works. I told them, like, this is how it works. I was an editor of a journal, so I had the insights. I could show screenshots, how it's being done, how it's being processed behind the scenes, because people don't know. I was explaining, it was like, okay, guys, usually it takes six months until up to 2 years, but not 24 hours. It's impossible. Logistically, it's impossible. Technically, it's impossible. But it has been done. And the next day, by coincidence, was like this meeting of this WHO committee, which made this a protocol gold standard. And that was when they were able to conduct this pandemic. So I was only talking about that. I never thought I would get into trouble. I mean, like, I wasn't even blaming someone. I wasn't even saying, like, hey, these guys are frauds. I was just explaining the process of a peer process and why this is impossible, what we have observed. Yeah. This is what I've been telling people. And yeah, I lost my job very quickly. And I had police at the front door. You can't imagine. I was stopped by the police on the streets, and it was very inconvenient, I'd say.
Does that sort of reflect what we've seen here in the United States with this public-private partnership, where you see clearly that the corporations have lined up to support the bureaucratic agencies of people that, like Fauci? Nobody in the United States, we're supposed to have a constitutional republic, right? And have a Republican form of government where we have people that we choose to represent us. And instead they've created a side government, an administrative state of agencies that have unelected people like Fauci and others just dictating what we do. So is it running in parallel in the Netherlands at the time with what we've seen happen globally through COVID? Is that how you see this, as a global public-private partnership of hell, ostensibly?
I think it was a bit different. I think in the Netherlands, and especially in Europe in general, it was the media pushing people. So
influencing your employer to fire you over your position?
Oh, this was government. This was government. Okay. So we have state media. I mean, you have all state media in the US, but they're rather small. And I think in almost all European countries, state media is the biggest media. So the government can tell the state media more or less what they can report. And of course, they say they're independent, but they're not. Because in the board of directors of all these state media people, you have only politicians of the party in power. So I mean, indirectly, they tell what they have to report about. So we've seen this at least in Germany and Netherlands, because I'm focusing on these two countries because of Marion Koopmans and Christian Drosten. They put these people and these virologists in power. Like every talk show, every night, every second that you're on TV, you saw their faces lying to us. Like
and Fauci and Deborah Birx, right? Here in the States, Fauci and Birx.
Yes, exactly. But the fun part is Drosten was prior to Fauci. Drosten started, yes. So this test protocol, like, I mean, he's been testing it, obviously, his PCR test. And he already tested this most likely beginning of December 2019, and before any cases of China were made public. Because there's some Slovene laboratory in Slovenia, and they stated in beginning of January that they have excessively tested this PCR protocol of Drosten. But nobody works during Christmas and New Year's, etc. So they, I mean, excessively tested. That means like several weeks. So they've been testing it throughout December. So most likely they had this protocol before any case of China were made public.
Was anybody pushing back on the fact that Kary Mullis, the inventor of the PCR test, was saying the PCR test is not made to do what they're using it for in this application?
Fun fact. Koopmans and Drosten said the same until January 2020.
Isn't that
So
interesting?
yes, there are many interviews with them. I mean, I was exposing them and telling what they've been saying about PCR tests prior to 2020, and they said exactly the same. They
Yeah.
said you cannot determine whether one is sick or healthy with a PCR test. They even said like you shouldn't do it. And then in 2020, I mean, they created this mass. They said like, oh, we need mass testing. We need to test everybody. And yeah, they never said anything about this. So when they're being asked, they just don't reply. And the media says stuff like, "Oh, the science is changing," and
Yeah.
the common phrases we know.
The masks work, they don't work,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. Right. Okay. All right. So let's fast forward to you've been dismissed from your job. At what point did you feel that you needed to retreat somewhere far, far away?
More or less is right after, because I was there
Okay.
without a job. I mean, I won funding, so that's actually the fun part. In my free time, I did my postdoc, and the postdoc finished in March 2021. Prior to this, I wrote a follow-up funding, and I won this. It was a chance 1% to win, and I set up a consortium with many universities and research institutes all over Europe and the world, even some in America, Africa, Europe, and to get my follow-up funding for my second postdoc. So after I won this, they just said like, oh, well, we're going to take someone who's less critical than you. So that was how they got rid of me. It's well, legally they can do this, of course, but this has never been done before, probably ever at any university. If someone wins the funding for you to say, oh, we take someone else, thank you for the money, several $1 million. So there were several partners on this consortium, and all of them were like, "No, we're not going to take you." No, and one took me. It was a Norwegian Research Institute, and I was quite lucky because when I signed the contract, my Twitter account got suspended. so I was able to be a normal scientist, having a great scientific life without any issues at this research institute. No issue.
How large was your account at that point?
45,000, small, 45,000.
Okay. Right. Okay.
It was, but anyway, I mean, I got fired because my former university got all these messages and complaints about me. I mean, it's already a significant number.
Your trolls were calling your boss, essentially.
Skeptics. The skeptic movement. These people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in Norway, I was everything was perfect. No criticism. Never in a written form, never in oral form, until I got my Twitter account back in January 2023. Or it was end of December, I think 27th. And I got my account back, and within weeks I got fired for exceeding my freedom of expression on Twitter. That's what they stated.
Oh my God. As according to the European standards versus what we have here, which is just drafting right behind you in terms of fascism and silencing, censorship. Amazing.
Yes, and I know they got many complaints. So in a Skype talk, my former boss told me they get many complaints every day about me. And I was like, hey, I can do whatever I want. I'm there as a private person. And he's like, yeah, you're right. I support you. But at one point, he didn't support me anymore. I think it's a huge research institute. I think it's the biggest of Europe, and I think it's just like a political order to get rid of me. But the problem is he stole my private property before. So I was in a project in order to calculate complex agricultural systems. And I have an own company, a startup, and since 10 years doing these kind of calculations as a freelancer. And of course, in the beginning of this new project, they needed me to continue running their work packages, and I was the only one who was able to do these calculations. So one day before they fired me, my former boss was asking me like, "Hey Simon, I think what you're doing is great. I just want to understand how you do it, and I just want to play with your numbers. Would you send me your document just so I understand what you do?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem. I can do it here. But it's my private thing. But okay, here we go." And next day he fired me and he said like, "No, this is our document."
Yeah.
And I was like, this is fucked up. And I wouldn't even have sued them if he didn't do this personally against me, because I would kind of understand. I mean, like there are many complaints coming in, etc. But the way that he took it on a too personal level, to just steal my property I worked on for 10 years privately. This is, I sued them now. So I mean,
where is that lawsuit? Where is it?
It's
Where's the legal
Norway.
process?
Norway. It's
But
in
it's still
Norway.
in. You're still in the middle of a lawsuit. It hasn't been resolved.
Yes, they're
Okay.
trying to avoid it to at all costs. So they said like he's living in Brazil, he cannot sue us, stuff like that. Or they said like, okay, in case he loses in Brazil, he's never going to pay our lawyer fees. So, and I had to pay like more, I think 40,000 US dollars to the judge just to have a security, and I didn't have 40,000 US dollars, so I had to sell my car in order to put the money there so I wouldn't lose this lawsuit before it started. So they use all the tricks because they didn't pay me lots of money that they had to pay me before, so they knew I didn't have the money because they didn't pay me,
Right.
and then they used these dirty tricks. But I'm like, okay, now I sold my car, it's there, and I'm very positive because I mean, like, okay, now they come up with a different tactic. They said like, hey, he accused people of being corrupt, and I was like, okay, corrupt. I never talked about corruption I never accused people, but then I found old tweets of mine, so I was calling, I'm calling out people all the time. I'm confronting people with their old tweets. So there's this guy. He's called David Fisman. He's a Canadian. There's another guy. Forgot his name right now. He's also a scientist in Cartman. I think his name is Cartman or something. He's also Canadian. So I just asked them on a scale from 1 till 10, how corrupt are you? And I was just posting their tweets that stated, for example, that testing works for 100%, that vax passport is required, that only unvaccinated people are dying, stuff like that. It was just like, I took the screenshot of that tweet and I was just asking, are you corrupt? And they said like, I'm not allowed to do this, but of course I can do this. I can ask people if they're corrupt. If I said like, you are a corrupt son of a, that's
Yeah.
something they could say like, Simon, this is maybe nothing you should do, and it could be, you cannot accuse people of something they're not, but asking a question is totally fine. So they took these now to say like, look, this is the reason. But I mean, like, we again said like, there's no reason at all. Now they just try to disturb the procedure of the lawsuit in order to get out of there somehow, but not going to happen.
Interesting. I find it very interesting. You took a very dramatic approach to just sort of disengaging from what clearly has been sort of the bane almost of trying to just exist and do the right thing, where you were living and working happily, but people didn't appreciate what you were saying in your private capacity. And this is the conflation we have right now between the public and the private and the work and the personal life. People can't seem to separate the two. And you here in the States, you sort of have to look at things through a lens of, because everything is so hyper political and hyper partisan, because our intelligence communities have done a great job worldwide of dividing all of us, right? They just divide everybody down onto the splinter in between your fingernails. They find a way to divide us. People are looking at everything. Well, if Bill Clinton had sex with somebody, I guess it's okay. If Trump did, or, so on. Where do we sort of draw the line on these things? And, in your world, you lost your job. This is a real world thing, and you had to extricate yourself and move into the jungles of Brazil. Why Brazil?
Yeah, Brazil. Oh, I used to be assistant professor here, exchange professor, and I knew the country.
So
and I speak Portuguese more or less
okay.
fluently. Yes, I speak it fluently.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So this makes it easy. And back then, Bolsonaro was a president here in Brazil, and there were no strict measures.
How is it now under Lula?
Well, my state is still, you would call a red state. A red state here is the communist state. It's a conservative state. Mm-hmm. So I'm living in the middle of nowhere, conservative state, only conservative people around. So it's all right for me. But on a state level, it's of course, Lula is a nightmare. I mean, he's openly communist, and yeah.
Has the election of Javier Milei had an impact in Brazil or anywhere else in South America? Because the social media influence would show that there's a wave happening around the world of freedom fighters standing up. What does it look like from where you are?
Well, Milei is anti-communist like me, so he wouldn't even talk to Lula, which I think is wrong. I mean, they should at least talk to each other, their neighboring countries. Mm-hmm. And also, Milei didn't want to enter BRICS. I think it's also wrong because it would make Argentina stronger. But I think he's a puppet of Israel and the United States, at least the Democrats of the United States. The first thing he did was like visiting the Clintons. Yeah. Oof, this to me is a red flag.
Yeah, and you have a tweet up where he actually visited the Tunnel Temple back in November, and of course, Alex Jones did a big special on the Tunnel Temple in New York City. From what we've seen, the videos. What do you think? Do you think there was some trafficking going on underneath this temple?
Most likely. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but nowadays you don't know. you don't know these days. But this mattress picture was like was a bit fishy, was a bit scary.
Yeah.
But the tunnel temple isn't even the thing. I think what's even more worrisome is that he's going to go to the WF meeting.
Yeah.
In Davos. Like he just got elected, and he's like saying, "I'm not going to talk to Brazil." He visited the Clinton. He visited this tunnel temple and goes to the WF. This is something I don't support. Also, that he's supporting Zionists blindly. I mean, you can have an opinion regarding Israel. It can be, I think nobody there is right, in my opinion. So
That's
both
an
sides are
interesting
doing dirty
perspective.
stuff. Yes. I mean, privately, I support one side over the other, but it's like just my private feeling. But in general, he as a president, of Argentina, cannot just say like, "Hey, I'm anti-establishment, blah blah blah," and then just like support just one side, which I consider weird. But this is just my private opinion. But that he's attending the World Economic Forum, to me, that's a red flag.
Well, I mean, it looks like the IMF is also getting ready to restructure the debt in Argentina as well. They have serious inflationary problems where they're about 150%. He was going to remove the peso and replace it with the US dollar for currency,
Yeah,
which
I think
from where
since
I'm
he's a
sitting
president,
isn't great either.
but since he's a president, I think the inflation rate's like 90% within 2 months, which is crazy.
It
For
is.
us here, from going from Brazil to Argentina, it's the best you can do. It's the cheapest country you can imagine. Like you go even for you guys, you go there and you go to a restaurant, you pay $1, you have like literally all you can eat. But for
Yeah.
the people living there, it's a nightmare. And I mean, like his approach, I'm a libertarian too. Like he's a libertarian. And I think his approach, in order to reduce the size of the government, to reduce corruption, to privatize things, I think it's a good approach. But the actions he's showing so far are a bit concerning.
I would agree with you because it seems like he's going off topic or off direction from where he led his flock to believe he was going to be a hardcore free market capitalist. And it looks a little bit as if he's capitulating, but I guess we have to wait and see. He's only not even a month into his presidency.
Exactly.
The World Economic Forum, you put a meme up that says the World Economic Forum is trying to create a global totalitarian state. And you have American patriots shooting an arrow into the foot of this Trojan.
It's Achilles. It's Achilles.
Sorry, excuse me, Arcadius. So, question: are we going to win this battle against the what I call the State Department for the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and their entire plan to take over? Or are we going to slowly descend into the abyss and the pits of hell and just surrender? Because America has always been sort of the last stand for freedom and rose to the occasion to support freedom fighters around the world. But now I feel like America has totally been captured and we're so divided and we can't organize. I mean, the freedom fighters here are now fighting amongst themselves about who has a better idea to get to freedom. It's insanity what's happening here.
Yeah. Actually, the freedom fighters are currently fighting the fight. Who's the better grift?
There you go. There's that too. I agree.
Unfortunately, it's going like that. But I think the WF people are waking up faster than I think we'd ever wake up. So I think they thought the PSYOP COVID would go way more smoothly.
Yeah.
That's at least what I think. And there are so many people who are waking up right now. It's like, I'm not going to get my kid vaccinated anymore. I'm not gonna send my kids to public school. And I think especially these conservative red states, they're not going to surrender. So I don't see it. I mean, like, I'm talking about the people, not the politicians. I mean, like, even Republicans are surrendering. But I mean, the people who are actually voting, I think the majority in the red states, they are quite awake and they know what's going on.
So do you think Americans will have an election and stop the pandemic treaty, the WHO's pandemic treaty? Will we push back on the regulations, the international health regulations? How is that going to sort itself out? Will it happen before we get to a November election? And do you think we will have a November election?
I don't know. They're speculating the same in Europe and all other countries. Is there going to be a next election, or are they going to put climate change before, or war against Russia? You never know what's going to happen. I just know the elite. They are going to try. They're going to do the very best in order to proceed. And if there is something which is in their way, they just, if it's necessary, they just fake another terrorist attack, or like, Have you heard of any terrorism in the last years during COVID? Because it stopped. Like terrorism was always our main enemies.
Yeah, flu
Yeah,
and terrorism both stopped during COVID. We had no flu and really no
exactly.
terrorism.
Exactly. So, now we are out of COVID somehow, and they will reintroduce terrorism because they need something.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure. I mean, I think also the war in Israel was more or less known or initiated in order to get those people who are actually on one side, the freedom fighters, to also kind of divide them. So at least that's what I've been seeing. So the momentum was on our side, and suddenly there was a war in Israel with all the media coverage, and 50% was on one side, 50% on the other. So they actually kind of divided the freedom movement as well,
Hmm.
which they're doing in a very smart way, to be honest. But as you see on my Twitter feed, I just say, hey guys, I don't want to state any public opinion here because it doesn't make any sense, because it's their war, it's not our war. Why would we want to be involved in their war?
Well, the United States is funding, and through the international banking cabal, we're funding both sides of all the
Yeah,
wars. So,
exactly.
this is all about the military-industrial complex, making sure they feed their own faces before while they strip away the food from ours. It's just quite extraordinary that Americans still continue to not fully see what's happening here. As a non-American, do you look at our country and just shake your head going, they had it all and they're just throwing it all away? Or what do you see when you look at America now? Be completely honest.
So I've lived in Oklahoma and Texas for a while, so I consider this my third home. And whenever I'm there, I'm like, okay, nothing is lost. But I was also flying in November to Alaska via Seattle, and I was in Seattle. And I was like, okay, they lost. So
Yeah. Oh,
I was like, what the heck? Where am I? Wokistan?
yeah. Wokistan.
Yeah,
Exactly. You should go to
crazy.
Portland sometime and speak with Antifa like I have. That's always interesting.
Oh, Antifa, they're the real fascists. So, but no, I'm not going to talk to these people. But I think it depends on the state. I mean, like every state in the US is different, and I think especially when you are in Oklahoma, Texas, people are quite anti-woke. Okay, I've been to Austin. Austin is like a different story, but I mean, like besides Austin, people in Texas are all right. I mean, there is
Yeah.
nothing lost. But if you go to, I don't know, I've been to Boston in June. Crazy. There were more trans flags and rainbow flags than American flags, and I was like, ooh, this is special. That's
Yeah.
weird. Every church, there was no church without a trans flag. I was like, how is this possible? So there, I'm like, yeah. So there are many scenarios. So it might be that the United States split up because I mean, like it's you can see two sides that are radicalizing. Saying it in a way. I mean, like it doesn't mean that the conservatives are radicalizing, but I mean, like if it's kind of if this polarization, you have this one side whereas the other side, you have red state versus the blue states, and it's getting more and more extreme. It's getting more and more um, how to put it. Back in the time when, for example, in the 80s, when you had two presidential candidates, you as a person would think like, okay, do I vote for the Democrat or the Republican? Nowadays, you don't think anymore. It's either this or that, and you just keep that way because no way you're going to vote for Biden. But back in the time, you
Right.
could be okay. You could be a swing voter. Nowadays, you're not. Nowadays, people are just trying to yeah, it's either pro freedom or it's pro slavery, and it's back the old times when you were like sliding into the Civil War, and I could see this happening again.
What will our future look like in the next 12 months, 5 years? Not
I don't
only
know.
here in the States, but globally.
I don't want to know. I mean, I'm here in the jungle with no neighbors for a reason. Because there must be, I mean, if you look at the debt of the United States and other Western countries, it's skyrocketing. So they cannot maintain this. There must be an economic crash coming. So
Mm.
to me, my way is being self-sustainable, totally, like 100%. 99.9%. I'm still buying salt at the supermarket, but I can just buy like 5 kilos of salt, and it's fine for 10 years.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a big crash that's going to come, and I think the elites already know what's going to be like. But
Is that why they're
yeah,
building the bunkers?
probably it could be. I mean, Zuckerberg knows, Biden knows. So why wouldn't they protect themselves, or at least build a bunker in case something happens? It's always in case. There might be a smooth transition, or there might be like a harsh transition, and I think they just want to be prepared, just like me.
Will you be prepared if they cut the internet? or cut your Twitter feed again? Will you be okay if you're cut off completely?
Well, I've Starlink. I mean, I doubt Elon Musk is going to give up his Starlink business, so that's something positive. But yeah, without my Twitter feed, I don't know, because all my incomes are from Twitter. It's actually my vitamin D startup, Sunfluencer, but the only thing I do is promote my product now and then. I don't want to be over promoted like the wellness company people, etc. So I just like now and then I just want to promote my product, and if I cannot promote my product, and all I do is selling my vitamin D and omega-3s online, I would be without income. But it wouldn't be a problem. I would survive. I have everything here. I have electricity, I have water, I have everything here. So I even can make my own biodiesel. So I can even drive my car. So there's nothing that prevents me from surviving here while living a cozy life. So the internet can shut off, but of course it would cut my incomes to 100%.
So I want to just touch on vitamin D. I recently did a interview with Dr. Lee Vliet, and we were talking about nattokinase and the overprescription of it, because if it's taken in conjunction with other medications, it can cause subdermal bleeding, which is problematic, brain bleeds, etc. But vitamin D has proven time and time again to be very, very critical. And I recall I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, Simon, and I remember one time at MD Anderson, they said, "Oh, your vitamin D level is at 60." And they were telling me that, or sorry, 80. And they said, that's very high. And I said, it is? And they said, well, the minimum is 55. And I said, okay, I don't think 80 sounds horrible. But the more we know now, fast forward 15, 20 years, vitamin D is critical. Is there really a limit to which you can have too much vitamin D where it becomes bad for you?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say vitamin D as such, but if you take vitamin D without vitamin K2,
okay,
this could cause calcification, so which means could cause strokes, heart attacks, kidney stones, clogged arteries. Okay, so if you take a high dose of vitamin D without taking K2, you might get health problems. So as I said, the people in the wellness company, that's what they do. They don't add K2 because it's expensive. No, there's no way you can be a grifter with the K2, with offering a product with K2, But
right.
Actually, what you have to do is taking vitamin D in a high doses, even 5,000 to 10,000 units per day. It's totally fine with 200 micrograms K2, and you will be totally fine, even if your vitamin D levels are above 100 nanograms per milliliter. And I'm talking about, I don't know if you had nanograms or nanomole. I don't know which unit.
I think it was an animal, but
Yeah,
I
most
have
likely.
to know. Yeah.
So that's even divided by 2.5. So if you had 80 at like 35 something,
Okay.
which is insufficient. All right. So you'd say sufficient if you take analysis, or if you take a clinical analysis of vitamin D, you can see that that the most beneficial blood serum level is above 60 nanograms per 60 nanograms per milliliter. So 60
Okay.
you should aim for 60, and you can go up higher than 100 without any issue.
Without any
And if
issues.
you want to get higher than that, you have to take lots of vitamin D. And I think there's a need for it. But if you're a cancer patient, there are protocols that suggest getting 120, 130 nanograms per milliliter, and it reduces your chance of dying of cancer significantly, as vitamin D is the most important vitamin that you can take, because it's the one that shuts down or activates the immune system.
Well, it's something that I take on regularly. I'm going to go and get my levels checked again. I've been healthy for 15, 16, 17 years. It's been no problem. But I'm also, I eat very cleanly. I'm a superfood, person. I exercise, and I live in Florida, so I try to get plenty of sunshine, although
Yeah, you
lately
just go outside. Yeah.
yeah. The chemtrails here have been bad for the last 3 months. We feel like we live in Seattle. I feel like I'm turning into a mushroom. It's just this low overhanging clouds and dampness every day. It's unusual weather for January, that's for sure. This is our dry season, and you wouldn't even know it. But this is the government in which we live in. They control everything at the moment. Well, Simon, I appreciate this. You do have a business, Sunfluence, and you can get to your vitamins, which I know is your sunfluencer.com, sunfluencer.com. It's on the lower third. It's in the description box below also. And I'm ordering vitamins from you. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate your candor. And I do love your Twitter feed. You have 649,000 followers. So clearly people think you have
Wow.
something intelligent to say.
Okay. I
And
didn't
you
know.
only follow
I don't. Yeah.
467. So I guess you're still looking for the smart people out there.
Yes. If you're smart, just leave comments. And what I usually do on Twitter, people who leave smart comments, I usually follow. I make
Got it.
lists and I put them into special lists, and I say like, oh, this smart person, or here, these are critical towards this and that, and I always read these people who are interacting with me.
That's fascinating. You're an efficient Twitter user. Some people, to them, it's just a spray and pray. They spray it all out there and they pray something sticks. So it can be an effective tool if you know how to use it. Clearly, you do. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, Simon, and I wish you great success. I look forward to following what you're doing and seeing how things progress, because I think the world is going to go have the rug shaken out from underneath everybody on the planet this year. I think it's going to be a big year of exposure. We're going to get rid of a lot of the fleas and the grifters that are hanging on. I think they're going to all be shook out. I hope, God willing.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. All right. Dr. Simon Goddek, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.